Next, I'm joined by State Representative Steve Clouse, Chairman of the House General Fund Budget Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks for coming on Capitol Journal.
Thanks, Todd. I always enjoy being on with you.
It's the other week, I guess it was about a week ago, we reported on the end of the fiscal year and how Alabama has seen just record growth, not only in the Education Trust Fund, that was pretty significant, but also in the General Fund, whereas traditionally that hasn't been a growth fund. So were you surprised to see that? What was your takeaway?
Well, I have been surprised the last couple of years. Obviously, we've had some good years. We've had just a tremendous inflow of federal dollars due to the pandemic, and we've been able to maintain that growth. Of course, I think there's some storm clouds brewing, and we've got to be cognizant of that as we go forward. The general fund budget is not like the education budget from a growth and tax standpoint. Education budget has the sales tax and income tax that really help that budget during good times. Of course, it can turn on a dime on you in bad times. The general fund is more of a hodgepodge of different taxes, from alcohol taxes and tobacco and lodging tax, interest on deposits, insurance premium tax, those type things that they sort of say stable, but they don't really grow very much. So in a downturn, if we have this downturn, which I think most experts realize that we're probably in for some tough times the next couple of years if interest rates stay like they are, I don't think that the general fund budget will go down very much as far as revenues. Our big issue is going to be on the expenditure side, and because the general fund budget takes care of everything other than education. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a couple of big elephants in the room. Obviously, Medicaid and prisons. We've had a little bit of relief over the last couple of years with Medicaid because of the emergency ruling from Washington during the pandemic that gave us an extra 6.2% that the feds paid for instead of us having to pay for. It's really very significant. That's about to go off probably here by the first of the year. And we'll have some big increases on Medicaid probably. Mm-hmm. The prisons, we passed our prison legislation as far as the funding part to build the 2 mega prisons, and it's going to take 3 or 4 years to do that. We've got had the bond issue that didn't quite sell as many bonds as we wanted to, not because of the protest around the issue, but because of the economic environment where it's just hard to sell bonds right now, long-term bonds, when people can do better with short-term instruments. Mm-hmm. So we've got some issues coming up as usual with the prison system that's going to hit us there on the expenditure side.
Mm-hmm. While I've got you, mm-hmm. I know it's a long way till the legislative session. It's not until March, but you've got another tranche of ARPA money, American Rescue Plan Act money, to spend. Have there been discussions between you, the governor's office, the Senate? Any projections this far out for what it's going to be spent on?
Right. Well, nothing formally. We're still waiting to get some guidelines from the Treasury Department. They'll be a little bit more stringent this time than the last time when you were able to use what we call the lost revenue portion, which the state of Alabama, based on the calculations from the Treasury Department for all states, our calculation was around $535 million that we could use for lost revenue that really gave you a lot of discretion on what you could use it for. That's basically was saying, what you would have brought in if COVID-19 had never occurred. So we spent most of that money the last time. We'll be able to calculate one more time on that, but I don't think it's going to generate very much funds. So most of the guidelines are spelled out, particularly water and sewer, rural broadband. Those two that I've already funded a good bit into that, and there will be more from the infrastructure plan that Washington passed last year for those two areas there. But we could spend all of it on water and sewer and still not have enough. We could spend all of it on rural broadband and still not have enough to meet the demand that we have there.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many underserved areas in Alabama on broadband. So that will be a major consideration. And then the COVID related issues there in health care, which will certainly affect hospitals and nursing homes and other medical facilities.
Switching gears, you're running for Speaker. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a really interesting year because so much of the leadership in the House is changing hands. You've put your name forward.
Mm-hmm.
You're one of 2 candidates running for Speaker. Tell me why. Give me your pitch for what you're telling lawmakers to elect you Speaker.
Well, of course, this is my 28th year. I've served 7 terms, and I'll be, myself and Jim Carnes will be the longest serving legislators starting in this new quadrennium. So I feel like I have the experience, particularly over the last 10 years, dealing with the general fund budget and dealing with the budgets. Also, I feel like I have the experience from the standpoint of when Republicans gained the majority, because I was in the minority for 16 years, of taking on some very big tasks back in 11, 12, 13, when we had so much pent-up demand on some changes that we had been advocating for years, stuff like the rolling reserve fund. That has probably been the best piece of legislation that we've passed since I've been in the legislature. We were averaging proration once out of every 3 years in the education budget before we put this rolling reserve in place, and it was a heavy lift. It's not easy to do. People want to spend, or some folks want to spend all that you got instead of putting some aside for the next year. And when we did that, it was some bad economic times. It's better to do it during good economic times. But anyway, we bit the bullet and did it, and we haven't had proration since. Other issues like the checkoff bills, the banning of double dipping, and some other issues were very controversial. The Accountability Act back in 2013, very controversial, about led to some fisticuffs among some lawmakers. So, I've got the experience from dealing with those tough issues, and I think one of the main things for a speaker to do is to be able to help the membership achieve their goals within their districts. And I think I have a knowledge of some past issues that they may not realize at first might be some hot spots that they might not be able to navigate, and to help them maybe to navigate some of those issues on their priorities that they may have. So I just think I have that experience to be able to do that.
It's interesting because, it isn't an election, right? You're elected amongst your caucus, and then eventually by the body. So you've essentially got a campaign, right? Member to member.
That's correct.
When you're talking to those members of your caucus, what do they say that they're looking for in a speaker, given that there's going to be a change of leadership?
Well, I think the main thing, they want fairness. Of course, they're looking after their districts, and that's what they need to. Well, we all have districts of 47,851 constituents, give or take 5%. And that's their main concern there, that they'll be given a fair shake. And so I try to reassure them that they will have that with me.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're out of time. Good luck in the race. I should emphasize that we did also invite Nathaniel Ledbetter, your opponent in the race. He couldn't come on this show, but we'll have him on in the future. But thanks again for coming on Capitol Journal.
I appreciate it. Thank you.